Welcome to the Daily Tanya. Today is Monday, the 9th day of Tamuz, and today we begin the last chapter of Shar, Hayichud, והאמונה, chapter 12. Let's begin with tzedakah. Gedele tzedakah, shemikareves es hageula. Tzedakah brings Mashiach closer. Let's do tzedakah every day. So, in chapter 11, last chapter, we learned about the 10 utterances that Hashem created the world with, and we explained that after you have the emotive attributes that are in general the force that's coming out from Hashem, but in order to give them definitions, Hashem uses the utterances, the words, Yehi Or, let there be light, and so on and so forth. That brought about the creation in a identifiable way, and nevertheless, we said that the 10 utterances are also all united with Hashem Himself. In other words, from our perspective, it seems like it's separate entities outside of Hashem, but within Hashem, it is all one, just like the emotive attributes, just like the sunlight within the sun. And in this chapter, the Alter Rebbe continues to explain how from these 10 utterances came about the whole entire world. Endless creations, and you have trillions and trillions of creatures in the world, all came about from the 10 utterances. And Alter Rebbe explains that the 10 utterances are made out of 22 letters. And everything originates and comes from these 22 letters. How so? How does 22 letters bring about an infinite amount of creations? As one person asked in the comments yesterday, that mathematically it doesn't make sense. So of course, it brought down in the Sefer Yetzirah. The book of Sefer Yetzirah is the book of that Avraham Avinu wrote about the creation, and there it states about how one letter creates one house, 2 letters create 2, and then when you have 3 letters, you have a combination of 12, and because you can start with Aleph, and you have start with Bet, start with Gimel, and exchanging the order of the letters. If you take this method, by the time you get to 22 letters, you end up with trillions of different combinations. I'm not exactly sure about the number, but we're talking about trillions. Now, it's still not infinite, but when we're talking about the different methods of combinations, it's not just exchanging the letters themselves. There's also endless different ways of how you can exchange them. The letters are being exchanged. For example, the first letter with the last letter can be exchangeable. There is the numerical values of the letters. When you have numerical values of a letter, a number is a number. And you can add infinite amount of numbers. And there's so many different ways of how these letters, these 22 letters, are able to be manipulated. And this is what Hashem uses as the code of creation for every single creature. Not everything we'll cover here, but we get the message, the point, that this is we're talking about the infinite amount of ability that we can take these letters. And the point of why is the Alter Rebbe saying all of this? The Rebbe explains that the point of this book is Shar, Hayichud, והאמונה, the gateway of unity and faith. That we come to the realization that everything really comes from the one God. When you realize that from these 22 letters, so many different things can be come out through combinations, and still they all come back to these 22 letters. That shows you how you have the unity in the creation. Everything comes back to these 22 Hebrew letters, the holy language. And the Alter Rebbe brings some examples also, as we shall soon see. So let's see inside. That's the Alter Rebbe. So we're talking about the 10 utterances, that the utterances were only 10 and created 10 major things. However, there's so many other things that are created coming out from Hashem's words. It says that the Rebbe רק שהברואים משחלקים למיניהם בכללוס ובפרטוס. Although there are only 22 letters, 10 utterances, as we said before, they are with 22 letters of the Hebrew alphabet. They're able to create a vast multitude of creatures. For the creatures are divided into categories, both general, whether human or animal, and particular. For example, the animal world, in turn, comprises numerous species of beasts, birds, fish, etc. This multitudinous division comes about how? Says the Alter Rebbe, this comes about through the different substitutions and combinations and exchanging of letters. By changes in the combinations, substitutions, and transpositions of the letters as explained above. So when the letters are combined in one way, one kind of creature is created. A different combination gives rise to a different kind of creature. For as explained in chapter 1, certain letters may sometimes be substituted or transposed with others. Those creatures whose name are not mentioned in the 10 utterances derive their vitality by means of the combinations, substitutions, and transpositions of the letters that do appear in the 10 utterances. And Alter Rebbe explains that these letters, each letter has a certain energy. Each letter carries an energy. And then, once these letters join together to form a word, it's not only that these kind of energies are joined together, but by joining together, they are actually creating a new, higher energy. Take, for example, you're making a cake, you're putting ingredients. You have flour, you have eggs, you have milk, you have sugar. You're making, and you bake a cake. And once you bake the cake, you don't say, pass me please the flour, sugar, and milk. You say, pass me the cake. It's a whole new identity. It's a whole new creation. And there also, you can have different, with these same ingredients that you use to make a cake, those same ingredients can create so many other things. Can create breads. If you change the amount in the recipe, how much of each ingredient, you can have so many different types of creations coming out from these ingredients. So this is just an example. And you're talking about the letters. Each letter carries with it a certain energy. And by changing, and by exchanging, and by changing the order, all of these create a different type of energy. And when you create a word, it's a whole new entity that comes through this word. It says the Alter Rebbe, "Ki kol oisi hamshochas chayes v'koyach miyuchad prati." For every letter is a flow from an individual, particular life force and power. And this the Rebbe notes that since the letters are separated from each other, what combines them, and how is this accomplished? The Alter Rebbe goes on to answer that this is the Alter Rebbe goes on to answer that this, by saying that these letters are combined to become a new word. And when many letters, meaning many particular powers and life forces are combined to form a word, azai, then, מלבד ריבוי מיני כויכויס וחייס הנמשכים כפי מספר האויסיה שבטבע, in addition to the numerous kind of powers and life forces, which issue forth according to the number of letters in the word, there is in addition, transcending all the particular powers, you have the higher power that comes out by joining them all into a word. המשוחס כוח עליון וחייס כללי הכללס ושקולו כנגד כל מיני הכויכוס והחייס פרוטיוס של האיסיוס והאוילה על גביהם. So the flow of a higher power and general life force, which contains and is equivalent to all the various individual powers and life forces of the letters and transcends them all. And that is the power that joins these letters together and creates a new energy of a new word. והיא מחברתן ומצרפתן יחד להשפיע כוח וחייס לעולם הנברא בטבע זו לכלולוי ולפרוטוב. It unites them and combines them in order to grant power and life force to the world, which was created in both its general and particular aspects, meaning with its individual created beings through this word. And here in the note, the Alter Rebbe points out that there is another aspect of the differences of the energies of that each word represents, and that is the aspect of the shape of the letters. Because as we explained many times, the Hebrew letters from the holy language, the holy tongue, it's not just even the shape of it is not just arbitrary. It is something that Hashem, it is godly. The shape of the letters is godly, and the shape have meanings. Each letter has a specific, particular shape, and that shape represents some kind of energy. That is why also it's important to have, as we mentioned yesterday, it's important to have the Torah written, or the mezuzah written carefully, and each letter should have the correct shape, because it's not just a matter of beautiful, something you want to something look nice. It is actually has the kind of energy that comes through the shapes of these letters. Continues the Alter Rebbe here in the note, ולפי שכל אויס ואויס מחבבי זויסיוס התורה היא המשוחס חיוס וכויח מיוחד פרוטי שאין הנמשך באויס אחרס. Inasmuch as every single one of the 22 letters of the Torah is a flow of an individual particular life force and power, which does not flow through any other letter. Lakach, therefore, gam tmunos המכתב, kol oisi bitmuna miuchedes protis. Therefore, the written shape of each letter is likewise specific and distinctive. המוירה על ציור, המשוחה והסגלוס האויר והחייס והכויח הנגלה ונמשך באויס זו. Now this shape, which indicates the pattern of the flow and manifestation of the light and life force and power which is revealed and flows through this letter. So for example, we know that there's the saying that sheker ein lo raglaim. The lie has no legs. A lie has no legs. So the saying is that the lie has no legs, that when you write the word sheker, which means a lie, in the Hebrew, in the Torah, these letters there's a shin, a kuf, and a resh. And these letters letters, the shin is, the real way of writing a shin is 3 lines, but it's not like over here, but it's more pointy on the bottom. It stands on one leg, and the same thing is with a kuf. A kuf is one leg on the left side, the leg goes down, and the same thing is the resh. The resh also has only one leg. Emes, on the other hand, which means truth, stands on solid foundation. Emes is the aleph, stands on 2 legs. The mem has also 2 legs and has a base in the bottom. And of course the taf. The taf is also stands on 2 solid legs. So in any case, each letter, in Chassidus there's many different examples that shows the shape of the letters. And we spoke about the Yud, the Hey, and the Vav, and the Hey of the name of Hashem. The Yud is the point. The shapes of the letters, they all represent something. They present this energy that comes down, how it comes down. So this is what the Rebbe continues. So it means, what is the shape saying? How it flows and is revealed from the attributes of the Holy One, blessed be He, and His will and wisdom, and His wisdom, and so on. So now, the Alter Rebbe is going to give us an example. Returning to the body of the text, the Alter Rebbe now goes on to illustrate how one utterance, let there be a firmament, created the extensive components of the world as well as their specific creatures. So one of the 10 utterances is Yehi Rakia. Let it be a firmament, let it be a heaven. And the Alter Rebbe explains that, as it says, that from these words, Yehi Rakia, there were 7 heavens created. Not only 7 heavens, you have all of the parts, everything that is involved, the hosts of the heavens. Each heaven is a whole world. And obviously we're talking about spiritual heavens, we're not talking about physical spaces. All of this is created from one utterance, the Yehi. How? Because of the combinations and the substitutions of the letters. And the Rebbe notes that this also helps us understand the degree to which the divine unity may be perceived in relation to the created beings of this world too. In that the 7 heavens and all the celestial hosts were created and live and exist from the solitary utterance, let there be a firmament. So you see how everything comes back to this point, that everything is Hashem, everything is from Hashem's words, and there's no multiplicity, everything it's unified from the words of Hashem. Kegoin, the Mashal, for example, through the words of the utterance, let there be a firmament, the 7 heavens and all their components, celestial hosts were created. As our sages say, Shchakim, Sheboirechaim, Oimdes, V'teichanos, Man Latzadikim, V'chulu. Thus our sages of blessed memory they speak of the firmament called Shchakim. The 7 heavens, here the Alter Rebbe brings only 3, and he mentions Shchakim, the firmament called Shchakim. It says, in which stands millstones and grind manna for the tzaddikim. So again, we're not talking about physical manna, we're not talking about physical grindings. It's all spiritual concepts, but it's a spiritual world that prepares spiritual food for the tzaddikim. All of this is created from Yehi Rakia, from that utterance, Yehi Rakia, let there be a firmament. And the same thing is another heaven that's called Zvul. Zvul shebo Yerushalayim beis hamikdash u'mizbeach v'chulu. The firmament called Zvul in which stands the heavenly Jerusalem and the holy temple and the altar. There's the saying, there's the Yerushalayim Shel Mala, Yerushalayim Shel Mata, the Jerusalem above and Jerusalem below. We need to make sure that these two Jerusalems are together. That's when Mashiach comes. So in the spiritual Jerusalem is in the firmament called Zvul. And then there is Machin, Shabai Eitzre Sheleg ve'Eitzres Barad v'chulu. And the firmament called Machan, in which there are stores of snow and stores of hail. So each of the seven firmaments thus has its general nature, the fact that it is a firmament, but as well as its individual aspects, as exemplified above. Now all of this were created from that single utterance, Yehi Rakia. The heavens as a whole were created and live and exist through the aggregate words of the utterance, let there be a firmament. So in general terms, their existence as heavens result from the comprehensive illumination contained within the words, let there be firmament. But how does all the details of creation created from that? That's what Alter Rebbe explains, because there is so many different abilities and possibilities to exchange and transposition, the substitute and transpose all of these letters of these utterance, Yehi Rakia. ופרוטי הברואים שבזין ריקים נברא כל פרט מהם וחי וקיום מאיזה צירוף אויסיאס מטבעס אלו אוי חילופיהם ותמורסיהם. And each individual created being in the seven heavens were created and live and exist by virtue of some combination of the letters of these words or their substitutions and transpositions. These combinations, substitutions, and transpositions being according to the quality of the life force of that particular creature. For every change in a combination is an intermixing and interweaving of the powers and life forces in a different form. And for example, Alter Rebbe says that when you change the words, the first letter of the word makes it a dominant force in the creation that is created through that word. Since each letter antecedent in the combination that comes first, and the combination dominates, and it is the essential force in this created being. While the other letters, meaning the other letters and forces contained within the word, they are subordinate to it and are included in its light. So if you have a letter that begins with an Aleph, so the Aleph is the dominant force, the dominant energy. And thereby, through the different combinations of the same letters, a new being is created. Likewise, through the substitutions of letters or the transpositions. One of the examples is, as we said earlier in this part of Tanya, we said the Shema Yisrael, Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad. So we said Echad is exchangeable with the letter, with the word Va'ed. Baruch Shem Kvod Malchuto L'Olam Va'ed. So we said that, for example, the Aleph can be exchanged with the ayin. There's many, many different ways why it can be exchanged. It can be that because they all come from the same root, from the same source, the articulated from the guttural letters. Different ways of exchanging and the transpositions of different letters, and each way, and there's endless way of like this to change. So nivois brias chadoshes pchusi amala be'erch hanivroim moisius atzmam. So new creatures are created that are of lower level than the being created from the original letters themselves. So this gives us a little bit of an understanding again in this concept of how all of the trillions of creatures come about just from 22 letters. The 22 holy letters that Hashem, as we learned yesterday, with His will, His desire was it should be these 22 holy letters. But all of this leads to understanding that it's all Hashem Echad, all comes from the one God. So, at the end of today's Shir, Hashem will continue this conversation tomorrow as we will conclude this chapter and conclude this part of Tanya tomorrow. Bezrat Hashem, we'll see you tomorrow. All the best.